Hey everybody, it's Tommy Canale and welcome back to Before the Lights podcast, the show that tells you how they made their mark. He's an actor with over 35 years of experience, an improvisational comedian, and the son of America's mom, Marion Ross, who played Marion Cunningham on Happy Days. He's the voice of Captain Solano on Star Trek's video game Resurgence, and the new voice of Colonel Sanders for KFC. A voiceover talent that has impressions of President George W. Bush, Robin Williams, Christopher Walken, Sam Elliott, and many, many more. Let's welcome in Jim Meskimen. Jim, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Tommy. It's nice to meet you.
You as well. Growing up with Marion Ross as your mother, what did she teach you about show business?
Well, she really taught by example, and I saw her. I had the good fortune to see her prior to her big break, just as a working professional, and then during the slow ramp up to becoming, this icon really of television moms. And so I observed. I didn't just see the glamorous part. In other words, I got to witness what she did, the hustle that she did to get herself in a position where she might have a lucky break, and then to be ready for that lucky break, which was in her 40s. So that was, I think, very valuable for me to witness that, because I realized early on that, well, you really have to work. First of all, just to make a living as an actor, especially now, as soon as that strike ends.
Right.
And then even when you're working hard, you have to be resourceful and wait for opportunities and create opportunities, which I also saw her do. So I think I got a really great kind of a fly on the wall look at what it is to maximize your talents and to really keep a career going. And I'm very grateful for it.
Were you able to go on set and watch her work on Happy Days?
I was. In fact, I used to go to the set every now and then to see whatever project she was working on prior to Happy Days. And sets always impressed me as being really, really super boring. For kids, they're the worst. Because when you think of a movie or a television show, you think of, action and particularly single camera shows, which Happy Days was for 2 seasons, a single camera show like Modern Family or Malcolm in the Middle or something like that. It wasn't in front of a live audience. And, everybody has to be quiet and they're just shooting one little part at a time. And, for a child, it's like, I'd rather go watch, the pigeons fly around. A dog. I'd like to go watch a dog for a few minutes. It was really dull. But so I used to visit her and be very unimpressed by the whole thing. But as soon as Happy Days went into a multicam in front of a live audience format, it was really fun to go and see, because they would do it like a play and there would be break hours to film a half-hour show. But it was so much fun, and the audience was just really alive and exuberant. And seeing, the cast, it was the stakes went up. It just became very entertaining.
It's not just the family of your mother and you in show business. Your sister was also a writer producer for the TV show Friends.
Little show called Friends.
Yeah, just a little show that maybe people might have heard of before. Were you a fan of the show?
I became a fan of the show. I wasn't really watching a lot of TV. I'm not a big TV consumer, to be honest.
Okay.
However, I'm very proud of my sister. She's an Emmy winner for that show. She's a great writer, very funny. She's pretty freaking funny. And I love her a lot. And she is also, I guess she's on strike now. I mean, the WGA settled their beef, but they're still standing by us, I think. Like, it's going to be hard to write for actors that aren't there. Mm-hmm. But anyway, Friends, I I actually was on Friends, and my sister helped me quite a bit to get that audition. I still had to deliver the goods, but I was on Friends, and my experience with watching Friends was so limited. I didn't even realize that the show was an extended story, that it just was sequential, that it kept, developing and going. Later on, years later, my wife and I, we cycled through all of the shows. We watched every night, we'd watch an episode of Friends. And I went, oh, I see. This is a saga, a comedic saga that keeps building. And then I was very proud to be part of it. And I was proud of it anyway. And it was a breeze to be on. Some shows, when you're on them, they're uncertain about their future, and there's a lot of dissension and there's a lot of confusion. Friends was not like that in its final season. There was a tremendous body of agreement that this was a great show, and then they were just kind of bringing it in for a landing on that final season. And so everything was so smooth. It was relaxing to be on that set, which is unusual.
What was the first voice that you started doing in impressions, and what attracted you to start doing them?
Well, it's playing. So for me, it was playing, and my mom did voices, and I'm sure as a little kid, she would do funny voices with me. I don't have any immediate recollection of it, but I think it's highly likely. And she did accents and imitations and things, and we would play together a lot. I really enjoyed playing with my mom. She was in her 30s when I came along. I probably 30, 31, 32 when I was an infant. So, she was ready to have a good time. And she said she was so eager to play with me that she would go in and wake me up, and so I blamed my infrequent bouts of insomnia on my mom. But I think as far as voices, I just would create all sorts of voices. Impressions, I don't think I really did a formal impression where it was like, okay, I know what I'm doing. I'm trying to match this as best I can, until I was 7 or 8. And then I was trying to do Tiny Tim, because Tiny Tim was this performer, you may remember,
yep,
who was, kind of hard to believe, but he was a major star for a while, and he did everything in falsetto. So he would sing his songs in falsetto, which was perfect for an 8-year-old. Tiptoe through the tulips, by the window, by the willow tree, and tiptoe through the tulips with me. So I really killed at age 8 with that.
What is the hardest one that you've perfected, that you just took you the longest to get down?
Well, I tell you, I worked very hard to try to duplicate Tommy Lee Jones, really out of respect more than anything else. And because it does take a kind of an unusual placement in my face to do this, I did drill it quite a bit and try, actually put some effort in. And so now it's pretty easy to drop into. But back originally, it took just a little bit more time, a little more effort.
How many voices do you currently do?
Let me check. I have it all on a database. Let's see. Oh, no, not him. No, he's out. No, she's in. I don't really keep track of numerically, but I would say it's in the arena of 75 to 100. Yeah. And people come and go. They drop out of favor.
I can see that.
Nobody's really requesting Bill Cosby very much these days.
I can see why. How did the whole thing come about for you appearing on America's Got Talent in 2013?
Well, thanks for asking. I was on America's Got Talent, and I did not have much of, again, not being much of a watcher, I didn't know much about the show. I thought it was a show for amateurs. I thought it was like a talent show. So when a producer came up to me at an event where I was giving a presentation and said, "Hey, do you ever think about going on America's Got Talent?" I was kind of insulted. Like, did you ever think about, going into the 6th grade? But he said, no, it's not like that. It's, it's different performers, and it's a variety show, and, comedians do it, and it's a good public relations thing. And I went, well, okay, that I understand. If it's like a public relations, basically trying to get better known and stuff like that. I didn't have any big designs on winning because I wasn't interested in either of the prizes. The prizes are you get a room in Vegas for a month or something, and I respect the fact that you're in Vegas. I'm not a big fan of Vegas myself. And nothing against anybody who loves Vegas, but it's just not my cup of tea. And the other prize is $1 million. You'd go, well, why not $1 million? What's wrong with that? But do you know how they happen to pay out that $1 million?
No, I do not.
It's in the fine print at the end of every America's Got Talent show. It's paid out over the brisk time of 40 years.
Wow.
Yeah. So that's 25 grand a year. So it's not,
you can't live on that.
I think you can get it faster if you cut it in half or something, but after taxes, it's like, okay, that's not a big inspiration for me, but I did want to be in front of an audience. I had just gone to a Radio City Music Hall with my family the season before. And so that was where the big competition was going to take place. I thought, well, I would like to experience being on stage at Radio City Music Hall in front of 6,000 people in the house and another 10 million at home. That I think I'd like that challenge. And so that's why I did it.
Jim, have you ever had to fill in for a celebrity voice that you do in an emergency where they got sick, they couldn't do something, and Jim Meskimen gets called in to do it for him?
Not on a sick call, but sometimes, quite often, in the promotion of films, celebrities are unavailable to do the endless variety of trailer bites. In other words, small, snippets of their performance that will be used for the promotion of whatever project they've completed. So I have many times done, for example, Colin Firth's voice for trailers, different trailers for films he's in. Because sometimes, as in 1917, motion picture 1917, done by the very great Sam Mendes, the line that they want to use for the trailer is this long, and they really need it to be this long. So instead of saying, you gentlemen are going to head out across the no man's land and somehow locate Lieutenant Colonel Jaffe, I'll say, you lads got to head out and find Colonel Jaffe. So they demote him in military rank, but that's so that sort of thing happens quite often. And one time, I still don't understand why this happened, but Ron Howard was being honored. And I know Ron Howard obviously through Happy Days, but I also know him as an actor. I've been in 5 of his films. And they called me in because I do a Ron Howard impression. And I've done that for quite a bit. And they said, we need someone to read this description of why Imagine Entertainment was put together for this banquet that's honoring Ron. And so, it was a job. So I went down and I said, now, Ron is going to be in the audience, right? This is honoring Ron. How does that work? And they went, well, yeah, no, that's what we couldn't get him and blah, blah, blah. Okay. It's a very strange kind of altitude, that Ron Howard has, certain celebrities have, where they're going to sit at a banquet and listen to someone imitate them, talk about the founding of their company. But, I never thought another thing about it. And then quite a bit later, I ran into Ron and I said, hey, Ron, not for nothing, but at this banquet, did you hear, was there anything strange about it? And he went, oh, yeah. Oh, that was you? Oh, yeah. I thought I had a cold.
That's pretty good, though, when you can almost trick the person's voice. That's
yeah. So, yeah, that's me. That's me. I guess, wow. What do you know?
In your business, Jim, it seems like everybody got a break somehow. Who or what created your first break to get you going in the business?
Well, I was thinking about this recently. I've had a very herky-jerky kind of scattershot career, and I got into animation voiceover by being a storyboard artist and character designer. because I'm also a cartoonist illustrator. That was my first career. I worked for Hanna-Barbera for a time. And then I got a break, a really lucky break, with the Rankin Bass people in New York City. And they're famous for doing Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer and a lot of wonderful holiday programming with the stop-action animation and then tons of other things that they did. And I got a meeting with Jules Bass, and he hired me to do storyboards for a new show called Thundercats. And as it happened, I was rather poor at doing storyboards. But rather than just fire me and send me on my way, he said, "We're gonna put you into character design," which was something that I knew how to do passively. So I was I was the senior character designer for the original Thundercats show. From there, I made the leap into voiceovers because they were also, after about a year, they were casting a new series that they were developing, which I had nothing to do with the design of, but they were looking for voices, and they allowed me to audition, and they hired me, and I did my first television series with them in New York. So that was a major break because it gave me, some breathing room. I didn't have to do a 9-to-5 job anymore, and I could concentrate more on auditions and improv, which I was doing a lot of back then.
You did President Washington in a Geico commercial as Washington crosses the Delaware Turnpike. Listeners, right. I'll put a link in the show notes to this commercial. Your mom claims now that she's the mother of the father of the country, which I think is pretty cool.
Yeah.
But doing this commercial, tell me about this, because I was watching, I'm thinking about all the stuff that had to go into making this work. How difficult was that?
Oh, it was a nice challenge. I mean, I didn't have to do too much except to try to not fall off that boat that the men were pushing. There were a bunch of actors dressed in Revolutionary War garb that were pushing me across the concrete. And not too far away from my house here. We didn't actually go to Delaware, but we did it in Los Angeles. But it was fun too, because I got to be dressed in a lot of prosthetic makeup. I had my nose was made more Roman, and I had obviously a wig and all the accoutrements. And the makeup artist that designed my makeup had been a young man when I first met him 25 years prior on the set of The Grinch, another Ron Howard film that I worked on. And he was just a fledgling makeup artist. Christian Tinsley is his name. And he's now quite established. He's worked on Westworld and a bunch of big shows, and he's amazing. And we were reunited for that commercial. So that was super fun.
And for George Washington's voice, of course, we don't have any extant recordings of our first president, the father of our country. So I just sort of evoked this kind of stentorian, paternal, authoritative, early American voice.
Jim, how did they do the face animation in this thing called My Big Story in 7 News Australia, where you did all these voices, but they animated your face to almost look like the character that it was going through?
Oh, well, that's a video that I made, actually.
Okay.
That show reran, I suppose. It went all over the place. It was pretty viral. And that's a technique called deep fake, which is now becoming quite well known. And at the time, this is now going back 5 or 6 years, I think. It's still kind of shocking, I think, for people to see, but it's now something that's available on almost everybody's phone. It is it's AI. It's a way of quickly crunching a lot of visual data. And in order to put someone who's really well known and well documented digitally, put their face on another person's face. So I created a poem called "Pity the Poor Impressionist," and laid that this artist that I worked with in England, Sam Head, who goes by the name of Shamuk. He did the deep fake and basically changed my face every time I changed character. And it's a wonderful illusion. Mm-hmm. And what's great about it too, if people see it, it's called A Deeper Look at an Impressionist, and it's on my YouTube channel. And what's wonderful about it is that we started off with celebrities that are not all that dissimilar to my face. And so for the first 3 or 4, I think people are thinking, wow, that impressionist is changing his face subtly, and he's lengthening his nose a little bit and broadening his eyes. And then about the fourth or fifth, you go, wait a minute, there's something else going on here.
Right.
No one could grow a mustache that fast.
It's a really cool video. Listeners, I'll put a link to that as well in the show notes so you can check it out.
I've got others on my YouTube channel as well. I continue to do some really amazing stuff with this guy, and I imagine we'll be doing more in the future.
How did you become the voice of Colonel Sanders? Did they contact you? Did you have to audition? How'd that work out?
Well, it was a series of fortunate events as far as I'm concerned. Of course, I've been doing it now. You may not realize that I've been doing it for about 6 or 7 years. So although I am the new voice, I am also the old voice. I knew a copywriter that was he was writing copy for a new campaign, and he asked me, hey, how's your Colonel Sanders? But prior to that, I had auditioned. There was an agency that was looking for a full-on on-camera Colonel Sanders, and I thought, well, I don't really have the facial or physical build for this role, but I knew the voice because I've listened to him when I was a kid growing up, and it's one of those voices you just can't forget. It's almost like a member of the family. So I went in and I auditioned anyway, and I think they kind of remembered me. And they went in a totally different direction, and everything changed, and they hired Daryl Hammond to do it, and then a series of other comedians to do it. But I think they always had me kind of in mind to utilize somehow because of the quality of the impression. I can tell you a lot about my live performing, and it has a lot to do with my skills as an impressionist. And most of the really good jobs that I get these days has to do with the fact that I can duplicate other actors. I flatter myself that I'm a perfectly decent actor in my own right. And right now I'm doing a live show every month or so called Impressions, where I perform a live in front of an audience, and I do lots and lots of impressions. It's got music in it. I do singing impressions and comedy and poetry and all kinds of fun stuff. So, I never really foresaw that this would be my career. When I was a young man, as I said, I wanted to be a visual artist more than anything else. I wanted to be a cartoonist. I wanted to draw like the guys in Mad Magazine and those kind of things. And yet my career has taken me to this very strange place where I mostly sound like other people.
JimMeskimen.com. Is that where listeners can go to check out where the live Jimpressions show will be next?
JimMeskimen.com. Yeah, exactly. And you can sign up for, I do free live streams and all kinds of things, and also do a tremendous amount of stuff on the socials, on Instagram and TikTok and YouTube. I'm putting up stuff every week, and trying to just bring a smile to people. These are tough times. We all need to laugh and smile and kind of reject the grimness of life. So I try to do my bit in sorting that out, so that people don't have to have such a glum outlook on life, but can also have a laugh. I laugh.
Custom Jimpressions. You can also get listeners at JimMeskimen.com. So I'll put a link to the website there. Does comedy and impressionist basically go hand in hand?
I think so. I mean, there's a long tradition of that, right? Rich Little and Fred Travalena and Frank Caliendo, the great Frank Caliendo, does a fantastic comedic set, and he's a proper stand-up. When I do my show, it's more theatrical. I don't do it in a club or a bar if I can possibly help it. I don't care for comedy clubs very much, be honest. Not just the aroma, but also just the kind of expectation of what people are going to see. And a lot of time it's kind of crazy, and I grew up in a theatrical family. I like plays. I like things that are dramatic and comedic. And I like that mixture of humor and surprise and music and all that kind of stuff. But I have a lot of respect for stand-up comedians. They do a great job, a great service, I think, to society. And the real pros, I notice, are people that they hone it. They go in and they do the same thing every night. They gauge where the audience reaction was. They record themselves. They go, all right, well, if I did this way, they'll like this, and they didn't like this at all, so that goes away. and they're really crafting this tight set of 10 minutes, 20 minutes, an hour, in the case of someone like Frank Caliendo or the great Jerry Seinfeld. I tend to be more of an improvisational actor. I like to play the moment that's in front of me. So my structure is a lot looser, and I find it works better for me. It's just, it's more fun, and I seem to do well. The audience likes it a lot.
For Impressionist, is there a younger generation coming, or is it a dying art?
Oh, there absolutely is a younger generation coming. Always, always,
Good.
always. Because, I will say, though, that the younger generation has, as old people in my time used to say, the younger generation have tremendous advantages that we didn't have growing up. He almost sounds like Joe Biden. The younger generation, it's people that are shorter than we are. Most, the hair on their legs is longer. No, shorter. It doesn't matter. Forget it. But, nowadays, as I said, on your phone, you've got apps and things that will help you look like the person you're doing impressions of. Or you've got YouTube where you can quickly look up somebody's voice. I use that tool a lot. I use, search engines to seek out videos of people I'm trying to imitate. I can actually study and drill them. 20 years ago, we didn't have that. You'd have to go buy a record or go to the movie, or, it was a lot more labor to actually study somebody and, replay it over and over again. It was like, wow, this is a strain on my VHS player. But there are a lot of great young impressionists that are coming along. In fact, I learned from watching, and I wish I knew this kid's name. I've not put it in my memory yet, but there was a video that was very popular a few years ago of a kid doing I think it was a graduation speech for junior high, or I think probably junior high age. And he did a whole set of impressions of political figures of the day, and his voice had not changed at that point. So, when he did Bernie Sanders, it was like this. It was like Bernie Sanders. Why is he talking like this? But even though it was not, perfect in terms of pitch, it was a delightful and wonderful impression that totally, you got it. The illusion, everything was just hilarious and perfectly viable. So I learned that, wow, women could do men can do women, little kids can do older people, vice versa. It doesn't really matter. The key thing, I think, is the viewpoint of the person. And that's true in acting too. You want to capture what's that person's opinion of things? How do they see the world, and what kind of things would they say? And it almost doesn't matter how super precise you get on the actual duplication or performance of it.
Tell my listeners about your online course. It's available at gymworkingactor.com, the Working Actor Method.
Yeah, this is another thing, unfortunately, that was a little stale dated in my press release that you received. So my course does exist.
Okay.
It is not yet available. So I do have a course in impressions, a course in voice acting, and a voice in becoming and staying a working actor. But right now it's being switched over from one platform to another, and it is en route. But if you go to jimmeskimen.com, eventually, hopefully in short order, you'll be able to find out where that is, but in the meantime, I've got stuff on YouTube where I do actor tips, and we can send people there. And lots of actor tips. And pretty soon people will be able to pursue television and film acting again, hopefully. Not quite as soon as I'd hoped. I heard this morning that our negotiations have stalled out again. So hopefully we'll all get back to work, but this is a great time for actors to prepare to go to acting school. And if I may recommend a very good acting school that has classes in person and online, go to theactingcenterla.com, theactingcenterla.com. That's the best acting school that I've ever heard of. I go there, and full disclosure, my wife is one of the founders, but I think that they have the best approach because they do not allow criticism of the students by the teachers and not by other students. So nobody gets to say, oh, Clark is so much better than Hazel, or, oh, Ned, I wish you'd walked in that door a little faster. I'm not buying that. I just don't feel like you really have pneumonia. So that's all expunged and taken out of the curriculum. Instead, it's drilling and putting the stuff to work and trying out different emotions and trying out different points of view. And you make your own decision. Eventually, you develop some artistic judgment about what you're doing, and it's very effective.
Listeners, make sure you follow Jim on social media. He's been saying on YouTube, on TikTok, Instagram. On TikTok, one of his top 5 impressions has reached almost 9 million views, which is pretty cool in my book. And now I'll also put a link to your IMDb page where you can look at all his work and all the films he's been in. While they're on strike, you can take a look at that. But I want to shift a little bit, Jim, to this. You're an artist that has exhibits and sells realist oil paintings. How long have you been painting? And tell me more about this.
Yeah, it's my first love, painting. And I studied when I was in my college years, both in Santa Cruz, California at the university, and I went abroad to Spain and studied for a couple of years. And I wanted to be the kind of painter that could, paint things that people would look at and go, "Oh, I see. It's a scene. It's a portrait. It's something identifiable." And I have a deep love of painting and a deep respect for artists and sculptors, and so I keep it going a little bit, but it's hard to maintain a full career as a painter. And indeed, I never really learned how to totally support my family as a painter. I turned immediately to the commercial world, and there I found a lot of success. But to this day, I still, I paint digitally. And I work with all kinds of different materials. I love watercolor. I find that a lot of artists are multidisciplined, like I am. A lot of singers are painters. A lot of voiceover people are cartoonists. A lot of actors are sculptors. And many of us are musicians as well. I don't play an instrument, but I love to sing. I sing in my show. I've sung quite a bit, actually, and I've sung for big video game projects and in my live show and animation. So it's just another mode of expression, another mode of feeling alive. And I'm lucky in that I had this great mom, Marion Ross, who indulged me in those things and was always supportive on my visual art stuff. Always loved whatever I did, from when I was a little kid. And even though you might think that Marion Ross, my mom, was like Marion Cunningham in real life, if you think of it at all, she wasn't. She was her own kind of person. Nobody really was raised by Marion Cunningham.
Right. That
was an illusion, a role, and a very good one. But my Marion was extremely rare, I think. And even though she was a single mom raising 2 kids and trying to make it in Hollywood and having, struggling, she never backed down on that aspect of support for us. I mean, she would get crabby about how messy our rooms were and, if I was destroying some piece of private property. But she was always, patient and, as I say, accepting and indulgent of my artistic expression, which I think was really super valuable because now I'm, I feel I have absolutely no problem with artistic expression. It is something that it's like breathing.
Listeners, and I mentioned, I'll put a link to his IMDb page. When I looked at it, when I go back to 95 and you started on there as the voice of Bill Clinton, to where you are today, did you ever imagine it would evolve to where it is?
No. Like I think I mentioned, I didn't foresee myself becoming an impressionist particularly, even when I was a little boy and I'd see Rich Little, who I believe is still performing in your town there,
yes.
Vegas. And I've met Rich and I've interviewed him myself. He's amazing. But when I'd see him on TV as a kid, I never remember thinking, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to be like that guy. I never felt that way. I just enjoyed the hell out of what he was doing, and Frank Gorshin and those George Kirby and those wonderful performers. So it's just an actor sometimes doesn't know what it is he or she has that sparks interest in others until you just experiment. You throw things out and you see what people respond to. And in my case, it's always been the impressifying. the impressification of our government leaders, past and future, or maybe not so much future.
What is the hardest thing about being an impressionist?
What's the hardest thing about being an impressionist? Well, the thing I just thought of, nobody's asked me that question. It's a very good question, I want to say. The thing I thought of first was that after a time, you begin to wonder, doesn't anybody care how I sound? Must I always be selling some other version of myself and never, that it's not terribly difficult. I can't complain about it, but that does come up. You kind of feel like, okay, here I am making a living doing Tommy Lee Jones and Sam Elliott and Colin Firth and Robert De Niro and all these guys. Would it be nice every now and then just to get a job where I sound like me? Would that kill you?
No, it would not. Jim, thanks so much for your time and out of your busy schedule and coming on my show and talking about your career. I greatly enjoy it.
You're welcome. Thanks so much. I appreciate it. And from everyone at KFC, enjoy a bucket of chicken a day.
Will do. Listeners, make sure you do me a favor and listen to the podcast docuseries I did in support of Native American rights, of the harsh and unfair treatment of the indigenous community. I did it along with filmmaker Antonino D'Ambrosio. It's entitled A Heartbeat and a Guitar, Johnny Cash and the Making of Bitter Tears. You can find it anywhere podcasts are found, or I'll put a link in the show notes. That's going to do it for this episode of Before the Lights. I'm Tommy Canale. And until next time, everybody, a salute, a chin chin.